You can draw this in Procreate. You can draw Mount Fuji in Procreate. I have seen so many wonderful photographs of this beautiful mountain in Japan that I just knew I had to create a You Can Draw This video tutorial for it. You can create this Mount Fuji landscape by just using the brushes that are already in the Procreate app, plus a free brush that you can find through freefromflow.com. And there you won't just find a bunch of free brushes made by me, but also color palettes, a fun prompt list, and my special ebook about color theory in Procreate. And yes, I'll keep saying it, it's totally free. So if you follow this tutorial all the way till the end, you will end up with a landscape like this. I'm sure you can do it because I have developed my tutorials especially for people who don't have any drawing experience or experience with Procreate. I will guide you through every single step. And if you are enjoying these You Can Draw This video tutorials and you want more, you want to learn more, then do be sure to check out my Patreon page where I share more in-depth video tutorials ranging from beginner level to more advanced levels. But let's not delay any further, let's go and tackle this mountain. First of all, our canvas is 2300 pixels by 3000 pixels and the color profile is set to sRGB. I have created a color palette for you. In case you want to use the exact same colors I'm using during this tutorial, you can download it for free through the link in the description. First thing we'll do is grab this first color right here and we will drag it onto layer 1. You can just do that by grabbing the circle here and dragging it onto the screen to fill your entire canvas. And then we'll grab the next color in the color palette, that's the second color over here. And we will grab a brush. We will grab a brush under airbrushing, and that's the soft brush here at the top. I have the opacity of this brush set to 40%. And let's make the brush nice and big. Let's go for something around 23%. And we are going to make circular motions here at the top. Just make a nice circle. And I'm not lifting my pen. And when I do, and when I make a second stroke, it'll become more opaque. Because we have the opacity set to 40%, our brush stroke is a little bit transparent. Now let's make sure that we keep those outsides nice and dark and light up this center part. Until you have something that looks like this. And then we'll go to the magic wand here at the top, to the adjustments menu and go to Gaussian blur and set it to layer. Now if you drag your pen or your finger to the right, you can increase the blur. And let's go for something around 25%. And then you can just click the magic wand again to get out of that menu. Now we are going to create a new layer. In our layer menu, we'll go to these two little squares and click the plus for a new layer. And here we are going to draw our Mount Fuji. Let's pick another brush. We will go to the calligraphy brushes and use the monoline brush. And for our color, we will pick this dark one over here. That's the 5th color in the color palette. I have the opacity of this brush set to 100% and I'll set the size to around 8%. And now we are going to draw a line and we'll start in the middle right here. And then we'll make a slope. We'll go up a little bit. We'll make a slope as we go to the center and we'll make that top of the mountain. We'll go down a little bit. And then we'll go to the right side of our canvas and you can make a little bit of a wobbly line until you are on the other side. And once you have a line that connects the left side of the canvas to the right side, then you can drag in the color by dragging in the circle. And you might need to adjust the color drop threshold a little bit. You can just move your pen from the left to the right until it almost fills the entire canvas. Then you are sure that you don't get this weird little light line around your edge. And if you are not entirely happy with the shape of your mountain, then you can easily fix it. Because our mountain is on a separate layer, we can just go to the magic wand tool and use liquefy for instance. Here you can set liquefy to push. I have distortion and momentum set to none. Pressure is set to 68%. And you can play around with the size. Let's go for 60% for instance, 61. And you can just push and pull your mountain and change the shape a little bit. Now Mount Fuji has a very specific shape. So we'll try to mimic that a little bit. It's a very special mountain. It's actually 3 volcanoes in one. There, so you can change it a little bit. It's a little bit of a, well, flat, almost, yeah, it's a distinct shape. And you can also just go to your brush and add little parts, for instance. Just go along the edge and fix some parts if you need to. Make your line a bit more wobbly if it's not wobbly enough, but I think this is pretty Fuji-like. Next, I would like to add another mountain hilly shape in front of our Mount Fuji. We are going to create a new layer for that, so we'll go to these 2 little squares here and click the plus for a new layer. And for the color, we will pick this one over here in that second row. And we'll still be using the monoline brush. We'll start a bit lower this time, around here. Make sure that you touch the edge of the canvas. Let's go up a little bit. Make a nice wobbly line. And we'll go down here all the way to the right side. And then you can just drop in the color by dragging it in like this. Next, I would like to add a little texture to our Mount Fuji. We'll go to the layer menu and back to layer 2 where our shape of our Mount Fuji is, and we'll click that layer and turn on alpha lock. Now we will only be able to paint on the shape of our Mount Fuji. If we start painting, it won't show up on the sky, for instance. Now let's grab another brush. Let's go to the painting brushes and use the old brush. Then let's grab this 6th color in the color palette. It's slightly darker than our mountain, so you might not be able to see it very well in the video. The opacity of the brush is set to 100%, and let's make the brush a little bit bigger. Let's go to 25%. And let's just follow the shape of the mountain like this and add a little bit of texture. Just like that. Now we'll switch to the other color, the one right next to it. That's the 7th color. And let's add some more texture. Let's go over it. And we'll just get a little bit of variation in color and a little bit of texture. And now that you got this, you can blur it a little bit by going to that magic wand, the adjustments menu, going to Gaussian blur and select layer. Now you can slide to the right and just add a little bit of blur, let's say 7%. Now we'll go back to the layer menu and click the plus for a new layer. We are going to add some snow to our mountain. And this time, instead of using alpha lock to make sure that all our paint shows up on the mountain, we are going to use clipping mask. We'll click this new layer and then select clipping mask. Now this layer is clipped to our mountain. And again, our paint will only show up on the mountain. Now the upside of having a layer set to clipping mask is that you have more control. You can always move this layer around, erase it, transform it, do lots of stuff with it. And if you're using alpha lock, you are kind of stuck with what you've done on that layer. So let's start painting some snow. We'll still be using that old brush, but we will switch to this gray color over here. But let's make our brush a little bit smaller. It's still set to 100% opacity, but let's go to, well, let's say 8% in size. And let's start adding some snow to the top. By following the shape of the mountain, and you can slowly build this up. You can make multiple strokes, moving down, making some curved shapes as you go to the right side here. We're just adding some snow to the top. You can also play around with the size of your brush. Let's go a little bit smaller, 4%. to build up that snow here. And you might think, hey, snow, that's white, right? But when you're painting snow, it's a good idea to actually start with other colors, blues or grays. Start a little bit darker. And you can save almost whites for the final highlights. Now just go ahead until you have something that looks like this. And now, like I said, you can switch to a lighter color, and it's not even white, it's a very light grayish blue. And we'll use that color to add some highlight to our snow. And let's focus on the left side of our mountain here. Slowly adding some lighter snow. Now, did you know that Mount Fuji is actually the most climbed mountain of the world? I believe that over 300,000 people climb it every year, though I do believe that this year it might be a bit less. But you can actually, I've heard you can climb it in a day. Now, I think this is looking nice. Got some lighter snow here. That's looking good. Next, I would like to add a little bit of a glow behind our mountain. So we'll go to that layer 1, that's our background, and let's click the plus for a new layer. And for the color, we will pick this third color in the color palette. And let's go back to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. And let's turn down the size of this brush. Let's go to 5%. And let's go along the edge of the mountain, adding this glow. Don't go too far outside of the edge. You can make multiple strokes if you want it to be more opaque. Until you have an edge like this, and then you can go to the magic wand and use Gaussian blur, set to layer, then slide to the right with your pen, and we'll soften this glow. I'll go for 19.4%, and then click the magic wand again. Alright, now I would like to add some mist in front of our mountain. So we'll go to the layer menu again, and now we'll make a layer that is on top of our mountain, but below our other mountain. So let's click layer 4, that's the one with the snow, and then click plus for a new layer. And for the color, let's pick this grayish color over here. And for the brush, we'll still be using that soft brush, but we'll make it a bit bigger. Let's go for 12%. And let's make some horizontal strokes and go over the mountain here. Using very little pressure. I just want a little bit of mist here at the base of the mountain. Now let's add some trees. We'll do that on a layer on top of all the others. So click layer 3, then click the plus. And our brush, we'll find that in the treasure chest brush set. Like I said, you can find it through freefromflow.com. Let's pick the pine tree broad brush. And for the color, we will use this one here at the bottom. It's the darkest color in our color palette. The opacity of this brush is set to 100%, and for the size, let's go to 14%. And let's start adding some trees here at the bottom. Just fill these corners entirely. Make sure that you don't have any gaps there. And you can play around with the size of the brush a little bit. I'll make it a bit bigger, 23%. Just make sure that I don't have any gaps there. And you can also make the brush a little bit smaller, like 9%, and add some smaller trees as well, between those bigger ones. And just make sure that you don't have any floating trees, because those just aren't real. Trees don't float, it would just look weird. Now that we have our trees, we are going to continue working on the mist. I want to add some mist here in the front on top of layer 3. So let's click layer 3 first and then click the plus. And let's go back to the soft brush under airbrushing. And let's pick this gray color again. And now let's add some mist here at the bottom as well. Just make some horizontal strokes to cover this mountain in. Some mist as well. But I don't just want mist, I want some clouds in this valley. Let's go back to layer 6. We can either work straight on this layer, or if you want to keep your layers separate, have more control, then you can make a new layer here on top. And for the color, we'll stick with that gray, but we'll make the brush a little bit smaller to have more control. Let's go for 3% for instance, and we are going to make very small, wispy cloud shapes. We'll keep them quite horizontal. Focus on some horizontal lines to create these really wispy clouds. And I'm also making these circular shapes, circular motions to build up these little clouds. And I'll start with a relatively big brush, even though it's only 3%. And we'll work our way to a smaller brush size. I'll make a bit of a bigger cloud here. I'll keep making these circular motions, slowly building up the opacity. Still set to 40%, and also my pen is set, it has pen pressure sensitivity, so the harder I press, more opaque the brush stroke becomes. And if you're having trouble getting control over your pen, over the pen pressure, you might need to adjust your pressure curve. You can go to the wrench, then to prefs, and then to edit pressure curve. And this is actually my pressure curve. You might want to change yours to look a bit similar to this one, and it could help get more control. Let's get out of the menu by clicking that wrench again and continue making our clouds. Going to continue making these circular motions, adding these clouds, and I'm actually going to make the brush even smaller. I'll go for a small 2% to add some clouds here. Still making little circular motions and making these wispy clouds. Now, did you know that Mount Fuji actually has the highest toilet, a public toilet in the country? And also the highest fee. You need to pay the highest fee to be able to use that toilet. So if you ever go there, make sure that you bring a couple of bucks if you have a weak bladder. But there's actually only a 2 months climbing season. So it's pretty amazing that over 300,000 people climb that mountain in those 2 months. I'm making some horizontal lines for these wispy clouds. And it might take some practice to make clouds like this, but if you're working on a separate layer, then you can just have multiple tries. Remove your mountains, not remove your mountains, remove your clouds and try again. That's the great thing about working on separate layers, having the ability to use layers. I think these are looking nice. Let's create another layer on top of layer 8 here, where we have that mist here in front. Let's click the plus for a new layer there and add some clouds. I keep mixing those up. Let's add some clouds here in the front as well. Let's make the brush a bit bigger again. 4%. And let's add some clouds that are moving over here, rolling over that hill to the front side here. You can see those circular motions as if I'm cleaning my screen with my pen. And just adding some bigger clouds here to the front. And also varying the opacity of these clouds, making this one here a little bit more opaque, for instance, and making some others more transparent. Now I'll make the brush a little bit smaller to 2% again and add some smaller clouds here. Again, pretending to clean my screen with these little circular motions. And you can see I'm connecting these clouds to the ones in the back a little bit, as if it's wrapped around that hill. Making that cloud a little bit more opaque here. I think this is looking nice. Let's move to our background and add some stars to our sky. Let's go to layer 5 and let's create a new layer on top there. Let's click the plus. And for our brush, we'll go to the luminance brushes and use the glimmer brush. Let's check my settings. I have scatter set to max. You can find it under shape. And when you go to stroke path, you can see that my spacing is set to max and my jitter is also set to max for this brush. Now for the color, let's pick this 4th color in the color palette. It's a very light color. I have the opacity of this brush set to 100% and the size is set to 7%. For this brush, if you press harder, if you have a pressure sensitive pen, if you press harder, your stars will become bigger, and if you press lightly, they will stay smaller. I'm going to focus on the outsides of the canvas and add some subtle stars. And in some areas, I will press a little bit harder to get a couple of bigger stars, to get some variation. And since we are working on a separate layer, of course you can just use the eraser or use a layer mask to remove some stars if you feel like there are too many. Now I would like to add a single bright star. We'll do that on a separate layer, so we'll go to the layer menu again, click the plus for a new layer, and then we will use the light pen. The opacity of this brush is set to 60% and I have the size set to 25%. And now let's make a star over here. Let's make a rounded shape, make a pretty big bright star there. And in case you're not happy with the placement, then of course, since it's on a separate layer, you can just go to the move tool over here and move your star around. You can actually turn off magnetics. That way you can move it to any place you like. I'm going to place it over here, and then you can just click the arrow again to get out of the menu. I just want to do one more thing. I want to spice up this painting by adding a touch of blue. To do that, I am going to make a new layer underneath our trees, but on top of all the other layers. So we'll go to layer 10 and click the plus. Now to spice up all the colors in our painting, I am going to change the layer blending mode of this layer. It is set to normal right now, you can see that N. But if you click it, you can find lots of other layer blending modes, and I'm going to set it to color dodge. Then for our brush, we are going to the airbrushing brushes again and use the soft brush. And for our color, we are going to pick this bright blue over here. The opacity of this brush is still set to 40%, and for the size, let's go to 25%. I'm going to use very light pressure and go over the center area of the painting, making these horizontal strokes. And if you feel like the effect is too strong, then you can just go to the layer menu, click that CD, and turn down the opacity. I'll go for 70%. And that's it. You have created Mount Fuji in Procreate. I hope you have enjoyed following this tutorial. If you did, then don't forget to check out all of the other You Can Draw This video tutorials. You can find them all in one playlist. And once you're finished with those and you want more, then you can always check out my Patreon page. I want to thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.